This week on the Nurture Series, the Ambassadors of Compassion founders, Eric and Jodi Hannah. Take a look.
The future looks a little brighter thanks to the Ambassadors of Compassion at Newton D. Baker.
The children are learning how to empathize and respond to their community. We talk about their goals. It's about beginning to find their adult mission.
It's mind-blowing of seeing other people. Strangers just coming up to your life and, just helping you realize who you really are, and it's really helped me out.
Here they're inspired by the voices of leaders and influencers from around the world who share their wisdom, expertise, and experiences. Through multimedia, journaling, service projects, and weekly group workshops with their coaches and peers, students launch into an atmosphere where they can safely share their struggles, embrace and conquer their fears, forgive those who have harmed them, and ultimately become positive influencers of purpose and vision. At the completion of the program, students attend the honor event where their commitment and success is validated and celebrated. By partnering with leaders in business, entertainment, sports, and education, AOC has been able to develop a program that yields scientifically proven, life-changing results and definitive measurable success.
Welcome to the Nurture Series, Season 4, the Egg Bach Edition. I'm Chava Florin, and today we welcome founders of the Ambassador of Compassion, an organization which teaches our youth how to have resiliency and life skills. This couple is dynamic. Jodi and Eric Hannah are a couple who are not only living their passion, teaching passion and resiliency to others, but they're also very accomplished filmmakers, directors, producers in their own right.
Almost 33%, or 1 in 3 out of every student now in high school contemplates taking their life. 2 million out of 17 million high school students attempt suicide every year. Most of them don't succeed, but 700,000 end up in the hospitals. 6.3 million students have a medically diagnosed anxiety disorder. 76% right now of schools all across the country are showing major mental health issues. That's unresolved hurt and pain. Healthy people don't do that.
And the contributing factors in your estimation, just by doing this work, are
not having built-in mental and emotional resiliency.
They say scientifically this is, one of the loneliest generations. Resiliency can be taught, it can be learned at any age.
You're not just giving them tools, but you're giving them a community and to be a part of something bigger than themselves. In order for us to feel a sense of self, we have to see our higher self. And now with everything on social media, you're not being challenged. Your consciousness is not being challenged. Your ideas are not being challenged. And what you're doing is you're challenging all of it. Eric is a director and a producer for the production company he now co-owns with his wife, Jodi, called New Release Entertainment. He currently serves as a visionary president of Lift Up America, and he is the founder of the Ambassadors of Compassion, along with his wife, Jodi. Jodi, in her own right, is also a television producer and an actress. They're just this incredibly dynamic and very, very creative couple who have figured out ways to use storytelling and their own life stories and their own life challenges to inspire our youth to become more in tune with their emotional system. This is the Egg Bach edition where we're talking about resiliency, and I couldn't be more thrilled to invite Jodi and Eric to the show. My husband and I actually had a chance to go to SoFi, and we watched as these students were inspired to have really tough discussions around forgiveness, resiliency, facing their challenges, being inspired to stay true to their heart and also to take responsibility for not only their dreams, but also for just their lives in general. There was one point in the event when different kids were in pods, little circles with coaches helping them through it and inspired NFL players coming to talk to them and inspire them. And there was this one part where they talked about forgiveness. It was so incredible to watch kids come together and have these tough discussions. Some of these kids are living in difficult environments, and forgiveness is a really difficult one. But to watch them do this process together, almost like they were in these like small little therapy sessions. You know, we get to hear all these stories in the news about school shootings, but do we get to hear the great stories? And I did a story a couple of years ago of another nonprofit organization that goes into inner city schools, the Legacy Project. They go into inner city schools here in Los Angeles and they teach kids different ways to use their story by teaching them how to create documentaries. So there are organizations out there teaching our youth important things. I encourage you to go and look at that small video. It was a short that's on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. But I'm excited to have Eric and Jodi here to talk about not only what they have done using their own creative voice, but also how kids have actually been impacted, because the science and the data and the statistics are really incredible. Welcome to the show, Jodi and Eric Hannah.
Thank you.
Just because I pressed record doesn't mean that we have to like, we're on the pod right now. If we could just be like, chill.
We can do that.
I'm very excited about this podcast because you guys are a power couple and you're doing something that is so freaking exciting. Like, I am excited to get into what is it that you guys do. So how did you come up with the idea of Ambassadors of Compassion? Where does this come from?
It really started from what I was dealing with, being in Hollywood for years, but just not knowing how to forgive. You know, Hollywood can be brutal. It can chew you up, spit you out before you even know what happens. And I could not figure out how to forgive what felt like a real injustice. And I tried everything. And so I tried to understand what forgiveness was, what the process was. Jay and I spent some time and she helped me walk through Face It, Release It, Replace It, which we incorporated Ambassador Compassion. And through this whole process of forgiveness, really Ambassador Compassion was birthed because I felt a release inside. I felt the anger go away. And all of a sudden, I felt like my energy, my attitude towards my family, to friends, to my children was changing. And that was really the start. And I thought, man, if this is helping me, could it help other people? And that's really kind of where it was birthed from.
Yeah. I mean, life is so hard. It throws you so many curveballs, and, you know, there's not one person that doesn't face a challenge or significant challenges. I had a childhood and a lot of challenges that I had to learn to overcome. And then Hollywood just kept those experiences, you know, coming. But I think a lot of times our negative experiences, we let them define us instead of growing through them and really letting them refine us and becoming more of our full capacity. Because we need capacity to walk out, you know, our dreams, dreams from the moment you get an idea of why you feel like you're here, you're alive with a vision and an idea, but you have to have the capacity to walk that dream out. And so we just learned that early on in life. And that process is really what allowed us to create Ambassadors of Compassion for youth and adults around.
Yeah. And it's more than that. You know, you start off by setting your goals and dreams and what are the negative people in your life that are keeping you from your dreams and how to overcome negative experiences. But forgiveness is a core to it as well, because if we don't learn to forgive, we deal with unresolved hurt and pain. And if we don't deal with unresolved hurt and pain, we begin to blame, shame, and name others for our own hurt and pain. And then we cause division around us. Even usually it's the ones that we love and care about the most that it turns on, right? It first turns on us and it turns on others in the form of revenge and grows like a fire. So learning to forgive, I mean, researchers say that you're 500 times more likely to die by the age of 50 if you don't learn to forgive. That's science, just simply because the toxins that are stored in your body. So it's a lot more than forgiveness, but at least that was the personal starting point for me. And then my wife joined me in that journey as well.
That was the impetus. I know one of my favorite lines that Oprah Winfrey says is forgiveness is the decision to recognize that what happened yesterday couldn't have been any other way but the way that it happened. I'm paraphrasing. But to have full acceptance that yesterday is the way that it was supposed to be.
Right.
How would you define forgiveness?
Obviously, you have to get in touch with how you feel, but you have to grieve. I think the only way you can be okay with what happened yesterday sometimes is through that process of grieving and letting the regrets or just the heartache of it, the injustice of it process through your body. I think forgiveness is most powerful. You have to just face it head on. You have to accept the cost, whatever that is. there's always a cost to pain and suffering, and then really being willing to let it go, being willing to let the offender or whoever created the offense, even if it's just life or yourself, but really processing through and letting that person off the hook.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll ask students when I'm around the country, I'll say, "Are you a forgiving person?" And they'll say, "Yes." And then I'll say, "Would your friends agree?" And they say, "No." Right? Because it's I think forgiveness in some way, and forgive me, I can't think of another term, is a little mystical. Mm-hmm. It's not just a very simple concept, right? We can say forgiveness, but understanding there's a process to it is really important. And so what we developed, and really Jodi led the charge on the part on forgiveness, is face it, release it, replace it. You've got to face it. You got to be willing to go to that place of hurt, and then you got to release it. We teach kids how to visualize that hurt going away, and it's in the process of the program. And then replace it. What new thoughts? What's the truth you can replace in place of sometimes the lies, the hurt, the offense? Mm-hmm. A lot of students and all adults carry some real tough scenarios. And when I take adults to the Ambassador Compassion program along with students, the older we get, the more opportunity we get to be offended and hurt. And so there's a process through it. We teach kids and students and also the adults the process. But I think one of the keys is, at least for me, and we teach students this, is that sometimes when we're hurt, when we're young, we mm-hmm. think the offender knew what they were doing. And maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a teacher. For me, it was a teacher, teachers. And we think that they're healthy adults who know what they're doing. But adults are not always healthy. And sometimes when they hurt the most, they're dealing with their own issues. And so being able to go back and visualize, for me, example, that teacher as not this big ogre who tried to destroy my life, but actually was wounded themselves, and visualize what maybe their dad did to them. It doesn't even matter. But whatever happened to them when they were younger allows you to have compassion towards that person. They become less and less monster and
humanized.
It's smaller. And then you can forgive them when you realize that obviously a healthy person would never have done certain things to a child. So that helped me a lot. And I think we teach kids to help get humanity back into that big ogre that really tried to destroy their life. A lot of times we hurt each other and we don't even know we're doing it, right? We don't even realize we've done it. So there's that as well. So,
yeah.
I think when you're dealing with children, though, I would imagine, you're dealing with teens. And I know that a lot of the students that you interface with are coming from pretty tough backgrounds and difficult family structures. And so I just wonder if you're teaching this idea of forgiveness, and then they go back home to an environment that is not ideal, that is, in some situations, they're living with a perpetrator, right? Mm-hmm. How do you teach them how to move through forgiving something that's in an ongoing trauma?
That is a common occurrence.
Yeah. So we have a program called LIFE, Labor, Influence, Forgiveness, and Experiences. And part of it is that sometimes, there's places you can separate, like who are the people that are keeping you from your goals and dreams? Who are the people that are constantly hurting you? And then can you separate from those people? And that's the first thing. Can you? And some can, right? Sometimes it's our friends, right? And sometimes our closest friends that are hurting us. And so, yes, in that case, you can separate. And then can you bring in somebody else into your life, or find somebody else who supports who you are, who believes in who you are, who isn't always tearing you down or hurting you? But in a family environment, it is more challenging, right? It is a constant forgiveness process. And yes, it takes more time, probably more time than we have to explain today. But as a result of that, we've also built an adult version called Life in the Real World. And then we also have now a one for companies called Life in the Workplace. So the idea is that as students are going through it, and then parents can go along with them in their own journey, the discussions they have together are amazing. And sometimes, I'll be completely transparent, a child will go home and it will be an amazing kickoff event. You have 700 students at a school, and the one that hurt them the most is the parent. And sometimes the parent is offended that the child is telling them that. Other times the parents are grateful. We have thousands of stories of parents saying, I didn't know that I was hurting you. That's what my dad did to me. I thought I was supposed to do that to you. And massive reconciliation from those open, safe dialogues as a result of the program.
But I know what it's like to be in a relationship where you feel you almost feel like it's a second career, just forgiving, overcoming, right? That cycle of dysfunction that leaves you perpetually wounded.
Are you talking about our marriage early on? Before I learned to forgive? What kind of what relationship was that? Is that me?
I have several.
That's a different podcast, Eric.
Okay. I know I was part of that.
There was a long season where yes,
yeah, it was a part of it.
Yeah, but
that's Ambassador Compassion was
but
born.
beyond even just in our marriage, right? I mean, we've been married, we're going on 26 years. So you know this too. When you're in a relationship that long, there's moments or seasons where, you have to forgive again. But some of the cycles where you really are in a perpetual state of having to deal with a reoccurring wound, you just, I think you have to assess the situation, right? We always challenge kids if there's a safety issue, if there's something that is, being pressed too far, we encourage them to go to a trusted adult and, begin the steps of changing their life, however that needs to look for every individual situation. But we also do talk about the fact that sometimes, using your voice, finding ways to try to heal the situation, and then also just having to keep forgiving. There's so many nuances in relationships. We just give tools. So it's like our whole goal is that everybody walks out with a tool bag, and they know how to be better equipped for life.
And to your point, in the most extreme cases, some students have had to be incredibly brave to report some of the things their parents have done.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to, or their life is at risk.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think that, besides giving the kids tools, what you're really giving them is a sense of community and belonging.
That too.
Yeah. Thanks for recognizing that, because in the journey, they have a journal they go through, and then they meet once a week and in a safe place. And there's questions that they get to process through, in the first session of forgiveness, we don't teach face it, release, replace it. First thing is, who hurt you? What have they done? Why won't you forgive them? And you have to even get connected, because I grew up thinking, hey, forgive and forget. Well, if forgive and forget means I'll forget, it could happen to me again. Yeah. So I would use unforgiveness as self-protection, didn't realize it, because if I forgive, I'm going to forget it and they could hurt me again. So I won't forgive. Well, you can still forgive and learn from the wisdom of experience. So you have to unwind certain beliefs, like using forgiveness as self-protection, or saying it's just not fair. Sometimes you've heard the phrase, forgiveness or unforgiveness, like taking poison and hoping the other person dies, right? Or we think it's not fair. We think that's not fair. Why don't I forgive? They don't deserve it. You don't ever have to forgive somebody for them, but for their sake. It's always for your sake, always. And after that, it doesn't mean you have to trust him or bring him into your life. Ever. Trust has to be re-earned. It's not granted. So we make sure we try to separate those things, those phrases, those cliches in our minds and in the students' minds before we even can get to face it, release it, replace it.
Have you ever had a situation that left you kind of in awe?
Good or bad in awe, or good?
Either. I mean, you interface with so many children, thousands of children, and I'm sure you see incredibly inspiring and also heartbreaking stories. I mean, this particular season, we're really talking about resilience. So I guess, in terms of that, anything that just spoke to you that you're like, well, I learned something as an adult from this kid that it was breathtaking.
Yeah, we do. We have powerful individual stories, and I think you're going to share one. But I just want to say that I am constantly amazed at this generation as a whole. They are feeling pressures that we never felt. And they're so hungry. They actually want to learn how to forgive. They want to rise to their full potential. They're realizing the need for resiliency in everything that they're doing. And we have seen it time and time again. You had the privilege of being at SoFi. I saw kids. I had one kid come up to me, and it was like he was so in another world, in a beautiful place, actually. His heart was so open, and he just kept looking and pointing to the stage. Now, no one was on the stage at that point because the event was wrapping up. But he just looked at me, and he grabbed my arm, and he's like, how do I become that? How do I do that? And so I was able to talk to him about what he's going to be able to go back and do and go through the program. But tell about yourself. It's an amazing story.
I mean, we have so many. When I say good or bad, meaning that there are students who have their life is pretty good, and yet amazing things happen. And then there's students that have gone through tough stuff and amazing things happen. And I'll say this, and I appreciate asking it because I'm always in awe. I have a hard time still believing the data. Yeah. I just can't believe it so much. That times
what is the data? Can you give us a little bit of the data? Because I remember that night learning some of it, and it was harrowing.
Yeah, I'll give you. Okay, we'll start college. University of Alabama. This is our 8th year there. Students with 3.0 or better increase their grades when they go through the program by nearly 10%. Students with a 2.0 increase their grades by nearly 40%, 43% to be exact. At Santa Ana School District, students who went through the program, their Fs increased by 40 or decreased by 48%, As increased by 37%, and aggressive deviant behavior dropped by 88%, and unexcused absences dropped by 52%. And I think it's when distraction goes away and purpose comes in its place, great things happen. When we did this program, I don't think we ever, Resiliency Institute out of Calgary, Canada, measured thousands of our students. They're the #1 organization in the world that measures resiliency and the growth of resiliency. They had measured over 1 million students in programs all around the world. And when they got done measuring our students, they said we had by far the greatest resiliency growth of any program they ever measured. And Dr. Wayne Hammond told that to my dad and Clark Hunt, owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. When he got the data, he goes, "This is the greatest program I've ever seen in my 25 years of this experience." And I think the reason why is information can be the illusion to transformation. Mm-hmm. So we get new information, right? We actually fire endorphins into the back of our brain for about 2 or 3 days, and we actually feel changed. It's kind of why we're information hungry society. But if you don't participate with that, in about 2 to 3 days, it wears off and nothing happens. And so that's why podcasts like yourself that are so amazing is because not only do we get the information, we want to do something with it. And when you do something with that, change happens. Just like in a sport or playing an instrument, you can explain all day long how to do it, but if you don't participate, nothing changes.
Inspiration versus participation, right? Like it has to lead to participation, and you're giving them this like full year of participating in really like self-growth and emotional resiliency. You're giving them all these tools, and then they get to practice these tools.
Right.
I think you had said at that evening that we went to at SoFi that how many students was it? 24 million out of 24 million, or am I getting that number wrong? 2 million kids attempted suicide or actually.
Yeah, almost 33% or 1 in 3 out of every student now in high school contemplates taking their life. 2 million out of 17 million high school students attempt suicide every year. Most of them don't succeed, but 700,000 end up in the hospitals. 6.3 million students have a medically diagnosed anxiety disorder. 76% right now of schools all across the country are showing major mental health issues. According to Gallup 2022, 78% of all employees are now disengaged, with 22% actively trying to destroy the company they work for. That's unresolved hurt and pain. Healthy people don't do that.
Has that number gone up since 2020, since the COVID event?
It has. It was already really rising before.
Really?
And yes. It's been rising for years. And the disengagement part, especially.
Yeah.
But now it's really getting very high.
And the contributing factors in your estimation, just by doing this work, are?
A lot of it has to do with not having built-in mental and emotional resiliency.
Yeah.
If this is kind of the first generation that, not everyone, of course, that you never can say that, but where the generation wasn't raised with that kind of resiliency. We were kids. You mowed your own lawn. The community supported giving. It was really built into society, and you had to be resilient whether you wanted to be or not, right?
Right.
Life wasn't easy, and it was challenging. And a lot of times they're saying like technology, a lot of kids are more isolated. They're connected, but they're alone. A lot of that is creating a false sensation of community when it's not
Right.
the same kind of community as you and I had. If, like when we would talk together and hang out, like, you know, I'm very shy. So growing up, not having a phone, I would have absolutely buried myself
Yeah.
into the phone. Instead, I had to talk to people who would talk to me, and I hated it.
Yeah.
You know, I would always sit in the back of the room when it was meet and greet. I'd go to the restroom and hide. My wife's like, "Where are
He still
you?"
does, I feel like.
You know, so it would have been so easy, but yet I was forced to not do that
Yeah.
growing up because I didn't have the choice. I had
Yeah.
to respond. I had to look in the eyes. So yeah, a lot of it has to do with the mental and emotional resiliency. And the great news is that you can equip it. You can learn it. Elizabeth
Mhm.
Scott and experts across the country, it's something that can be developed. That's the great
Right.
news.
Yeah. Yeah. I think social media has created a whole world of social pressures that no other generation at a young age can relate to.
Yeah, a lot of coaches in high schools are saying kids don't want to be leaders.
Right.
They're afraid that if they lead, they're going to be made fun of on social media
Yeah.
for being leaders.
Yeah.
There's a real tearing down of leaders.
But that is contributing to the fact that they say scientifically, this is, one of the loneliest generations. Kids are so lonely. And to Eric's point, it's like they do have this false reality of community and they're just not getting the interaction that they need. But that is the beauty. Resiliency can be taught. It can be learned at any age. And so that's really what we equip youth to do.
That's amazing. I mean, look, I know that social anxiety is, I think, one of the greatest ailments of our youth today. But what you're doing is so powerful because you're not just giving them tools, but you're giving them a community to feel seen and to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And I think inherently, in order for us to feel a sense of self, we have to see our higher selves. And you can't always see your higher self when you're young through your own eyes. You kind of need that mirroring to happen. That's how we learn how to find our own voice, is through who our community is and how we hang out with, socialize. And if that's being impaired massively, and now with everything on social media, you're basically just fed what you're entertained by or what you're interested in. So you're also only getting one streamline of consciousness.
Right.
You're not getting, you're not being challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Your consciousness is not being challenged. Your ideas are not being challenged. And what you're doing is you're challenging all of it.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because when they come back in those small groups, because they have to participate,
Mhm.
they are challenging each other, right? They're saying, it's a safe place to share sometimes when you share the dark things and you get them into the light, they become lighter. Right. So that's one thing that's happening, right? You're like, did I just say that? Man, that's not as bad as I thought, but I had a safe place to share it. And then they're also in a safe place to say, hey, you know what? You need to step away from that friend. Or happens all the time. A girl's got a chance. She identifies her first week. My dream is to be a lacrosse player, for example. And in week 2, you have to identify who are the people that are keeping you from your dreams, right? So this week, my boyfriend doesn't want me to go to college and get my scholarship. Well, either this week you got to step away from your boyfriend or change your dream. Well, I don't want to change my dream. Well, then we're here to support you to step away from your boyfriend. I mean, real decisions are made every single week that will affect the rest of their life.
And with accountability, right? Because you have all of these coaches who are there sort of showing them the way so that they have to be held accountable for their decisions.
We have 450 volunteers in Santa Ana School District. They can be actual football or athletic coaches in schools. They're parents that will come in and volunteer, but they're all trained. And in some type cases, like you saw at SoFi, we train student leaders to lead and hold their own peers accountable each week. So it's student-led, adult-guided at that point.
Yeah. And the other beautiful thing that happens in that belonging is that kids realize they're not alone. And we see this all the time. One girl will be brave enough to share that she's been sexually violated. Yes. And before you know it, the whole group is crying because they're sharing, they thought they were the only ones. And now they're sharing their stories. And there's so much healing in that, of knowing, wow, I'm not alone. Others have gone through this journey and there's help and community, to really walk this out.
Yeah, that, to Joey's point, that happens a lot. One example in Phoenix, a girl shared about who she had to forgive. I had to forgive my dad because he lets all of his friends try to have sex with me. And then the other girl said, I thought I was the only one. They all got up and they hugged each other and cried for 2 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
And then they went on to be the coaches for the junior high kids because they got so free. Imagine carrying that shame. And then you realize, wait, it's not just me. It's not just me. Something's wrong with me. No, it's really the other people, right?
Yeah. And these are groups that are not necessarily allies in the beginning. They don't,
right. They were the bullies. They were the toughest bullies.
Yeah. I mean,
they brought together in that school.
High school still has all these cliques, but you bring these groups together. I mean, those girls became friends through the Ambassador of Compassion program, and they were not friends before. They were definitely against each other.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a beautiful, beautiful start of transformation happening right there on a high school campus.
That's incredible. You rarely hear these stories. We hear about school shootings and online bullying and all the negative things. So I love that we get to have this conversation and hear about the positive things that are happening and what you're bringing to to these students and to these schools. I do want to go back to my original question, because I am curious about, if you can bring one of your stories that really moved.
Yeah, there's one we'll bring, Yusel. We won't say her last name, but we'll bring it. Well, Yusel.
Yeah.
So Yusel was kicked out of 13 schools in Moreno Valley. She got in a fight every single day, sometimes twice a day. And she punched the teacher in the face on the last time she was in school. And they said, we'll give you one more chance, but to come back to school, but you have to go through the Ambassador Compassion program. So she thought about it and decided that she would. So she went through the Ambassador Compassion program, and the first day you have to identify your dream. And believe it or not, her dream was to be a law enforcement officer. Well, then the next week she realized, who do you have to step away from? Well, I got to be careful I say this, but her family was huge in gangs. And she realized if she was going to become a law enforcement officer, she'd have to arrest half of her family. And she made that decision. She decided to go through it. She graduated with a 4.0. With honors in Moreno Valley. This is after being kicked out of 13 schools. Then she went on to the University of Alabama and graduated with honors, and now she's becoming a law enforcement officer. Now, half of her family weren't at the graduation, but it's an amazing story of Yusel, just really understanding what she wanted, finding the path, understanding the steps to get there, being held accountable. What a life change, going all the way, and then graduating with honors from college, one of the first in her entire family.
Yeah. And we really believe today's youth, right? They have so many voices speaking to them, mainly through media, social media being a big one, but they want a place to explore. They want to be asked questions. They want to not just be talked at, not just preached to. And so we find when they really get in these group settings, and it's like through the team coaches and the program that we've created, they feel valued. They feel like somebody wants to hear their voice, wants to hear about their pain. And it really awakens this inner hero, this fight, right? This fight to overcome, this fight to rise up, because I do believe there's so much power in this generation. Yes. And it's almost like we just ignite a match of, here's a roadmap. We unlock a door and then they just start running. I mean, we see it over and over and over again, just this power in them that starts to awaken to overcome.
You guys are storytellers, filmmakers, and but this is a total, in some ways, deviation from your original.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
This was not part of the vision or the plan.
This was not part of the vision and the plan. How does this measure up from being a storyteller to creating someone's story for them in real life?
Right.
I'd like to speak to that. That's a great question. Being a film and television director, my wife, producer and director, creating it to where it allows people to tell their stories is kind of inherent with probably me as a director. Yeah. I didn't approach it with all the science. I didn't research all the science. Mm-hmm. It's just the science has come and told us that we miraculously found the right path. And the way it was built was really from making sure everybody has a safe place to tell their story each week with prompted questions. Then they have to do something to lift up their community as ambassador of compassion, together and individually. The journals are there, and then we call it train, measure, honor. You start off with the training, you go through the measurement of the process over the next 3 months, and then you honor the students for finishing. And it's real life. So some students, let's say 3 to 5% at first don't finish. So they don't go to the stadium event at SoFi, or they don't go to the Dallas Cowboys honor event. And they're the next year, they're the first ones, because you don't celebrate. It's not a blue ribbon. This is life. Mm-hmm. So you don't let people come who don't finish because you want to make them feel good. It's because compassion is something that is a place of love, right? Where genuine compassion isn't giving somebody and keeping them weak. If you really compare, compassion is a sympathy for the suffering of others and a willingness to help. Sympathy is, oh, I feel bad. Compassion is actually willingness to help. So you want the students to go, man, if you don't finish, you can't come, but next year you can. And they're the first ones to, oh my gosh, guys, you good. Because their whole life, the blue ribbon was for many of them, not all, for many, was given. And it's kind of a rude awakening, but it's a powerful awakening, right? Like, wow, because that's what real life is, right? You get out in the real world and it treats you, it's harsh, right? You got to be prepared. You got to be resilient for what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So we focus on building that while they're young.
But, with a Hollywood story, I mean, I left home at 17. I got emancipated with my parents' blessing, but I moved to Los Angeles on my own at 17 to really pursue ultimately wanting to be a director and a producer in Hollywood, but starting out as an actress. And I moved to the ghetto. It's all I could afford. I mean, I just put myself right in the heart of the most dangerous part of LA. I got a rude awakening to, some of life. Right? Every kid that moves out on their own has it, but I definitely put myself in a more challenging situation. But through Hollywood, I then moved on to directing and producing music videos that were going on the big teen networks at the time. And we've always had such a heart for youth. I think we didn't even realize how much every media project we've done, even the Lombardi Awards that was on CBS and Fox, it's like, okay, it was the, college football award show. How can we help today's youth? How can we highlight really amazing, beautiful life stories? How can we honor kids in the midst of honoring all these, athletes?
Yeah, just a point of that, when Yesel graduated, we were doing the Lombardi Awards for CBS at that time, live television show, the big college award show. We were producing it with Spencer Tillman. We were creative directors of that. And we actually, with Spencer's permission, created a section where we honored Yesel for the Ambassador Compassion Award for Perseverance, and the real life Rudy from the movie Rudy gave her the award.
Yeah.
So it was,
and really we continued that.
So that's part of the Hollywood. We just want them to be celebrated.
Yeah. To tie in our second feature film, we just, here we spent all this time pitching it and trying to sell it. And we get an offer, and everything in us goes, oh my gosh, like this is the offer. This is the dream offer. This is what we've been working so hard for. But we knew there's some other purpose for this film. And we had to turn Warner Brothers down, and we really turned that into the Giving Hope Tour, which went across America and the world. Again, flipping that red carpet upside down, honoring these fighters, all kinds, in Mexico City, we did 2,500 orphans. We would work with all kinds of agencies, kids of incarcerated parents, hospitals, on and on and on. And it was turning that movie into the Giving Hope Tour. We saw such a need. It's like we couldn't be yanked away so quickly. We knew we had to go deeper. And so by premiering that movie across the world and raising over $120 million gift in kind and life aid for children and families in need, that's really where, Eric got this idea. I've got to go deeper. We've got to go deeper with the Ambassador of Compassion program. And now it is going full circle. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but we see how now we can incorporate our true passion for storytelling in what we're doing with film and TV in Hollywood with the Ambassadors of Compassion program.
Yeah, just a note on that, with the producer, Meet Miami, Lisa Abbott, she partnered with us. And so we would block off Hollywood Boulevard, bring a couple thousand less fortunate children limousines and give them brand new hearing aids and glasses so they could see a movie and hear a movie clearly for the first time. The celebrities from ER and Grey's Anatomy, The Office were all there, but they weren't allowed on the red carpet. They were the fans asking for the kids' autographs, giving Beanie Babies and jewelry. And it was amazing when we did that in theaters. Cinemark Theater provided all the popcorn, Coke, and candy in theaters. And it was powerful. And, remember seeing a young girl, she was a young mom. She got a pair of glasses, looked at her 6-year-old daughter and said, I knew you were going to be beautiful. Or young boys hearing for the first time and coming into the theater while their celebrities are cheering for them, on the big screen. But as powerful as those were, and they were, I mean, the tears were immense because they were real, and kids hearing and seeing for the first time, and scholarships around. It was amazing. We could begin to see that there was an emotional issue, not just, there was a physical we had to meet, but there was the breakdown of emotional generation that we began to see. And it wasn't just here. It wasn't just the United States, whether we did Canada, Australia, or Mexico. It didn't matter. It was almost like simultaneously we were seeing, as a kid, you would have a certain clothing style on the West Coast. You would fly, in the 80s to Midwest. And boy, nobody dressed the same. It was like 10 years difference, right? Now, I think with social media, it's like everyone's kind of at the same place at the same time. The needs seem to be at the same moment and multi-generational, so.
So interesting that you're seeing this like cross mental illness take place and emotional, like stressed out trauma, like permeating in the zeitgeist, like wherever you go. That's just so fascinating. I mean, so we're so hyper connected. And I wrote about this in my book that we're so hyper connected, but we're just not, at all interconnected. It's such a
very good. That's very good. Just a note to what you said during COVID, which we discovered along the journey, was that when we were doing Zoom, moms would be in the background, like, you guys aren't supposed to be there. Like, well, I don't know how to forgive either. And I don't know how to overcome my own experiences. And that's when I realized, hey, this is not just for kids, it's for souls, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And when you talk about generational trauma, I mean, I actually teach one of the programs that I created for adults, and I work specifically with adults, is I teach something called the Expanse Effect program. And it's a 6-week program. And I take people through tools of learning how to have emotional resiliency. But what's interesting is what I found is when I work with people one-on-one, when they heal themselves, inherently, they're healing their generational trauma.
Yes.
And they're healing their generations before and the generations after.
That's so true.
So they're building better relationships with their parents. Their parents are recognizing that they're responding differently. The parents are now responding differently. Now they're responding differently to their children. So their children are responding differently to them as well. And it's powerful when you can heal one person. It's not just one person. You're healing family units all at once.
Yeah.
So well said.
Very few people understand that the way you do. That's incredibly important, that you're also healing the generation of your children to come and your grandchildren to come, because it stops with you then. Otherwise you carry that on, like you said. And that is really, really important that you teach that. Thank you.
It's exciting, the work that you're doing. Do you guys have anything coming up in the future in terms of like wonderful films that you are inspired to make now that you've been working in this field? I mean, we're all creatives. We're all filmmakers here. Like, it's always my first thought is like, how do I make this into a movie? How do I tell this story? What are you working on?
I'd like to share. So the vision is expanding. First of all, we have another big kickoff in New York in a couple weeks on the 25th, with close to 3,000 kids that are starting there. But for about 11 years. And sometimes you can see things and you can have a vision and it's too early, or you don't have the language, or there's a lot of reasons why. And there can be discouragement, but it took a long time to get here. But now what we're doing is we're going back to the youth films, creating youth films. We were kids when I was a kid, mostly. I'm older than you guys, but John Hughes made youth films, 16 Candles. And it wasn't like they dealt with all the issues like Breakfast Club, but they touched on some of the issues. And so there's a real space there, and that's where our space has been. And so to make these youth films, they're comedies. That's our background, teen comedies. But why? Because comedies allow you to get through the hurt and pain of the heart, to speak to the soul. Many times it opens up the heart.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. And so we're starting to make films that become the catalytic kickoff of Ambassadors of Compassion in stadiums across the country. So when you were at SoFi,
they're short films or they're features?
They're feature films. So visualize like you were at SoFi, where we would have the speakers speak and the kids would have time to talk. You actually have the movie that's this is all before it releases theatrically, by the way. A film that's made for this generation, and it's broken down in several sections. So students get to literally talk about those topics of labor, influence, forgiveness that are woven in naturally. Let me give an example, like Rocky movie, right? A typical older Rocky movie, he's got his dream, labor, right? He's got his influences. People are trying to keep him from his dream. He's got his ability to forgive, and he's overcoming negative experiences, right? Really great movies weave these principles in. When you see a really good movie, like, wow, those are in there. So those are what we teach kids. So the movie becomes the catalytic kickoff. And then when they go back into their schools for the next 3 months, they stay in those groups and they go deeper into those topics of life. And so we've got films, we won't go into all of them now, that we think could take this to the next level. So the kids come into the red carpet, into the stadiums, like we've done in the premieres. The football players in a stadium, or baseball or cheerleaders are all there cheering for them. and it's a premiere for them, but it launches them into their Ambassador of Compassion program around the country. And then they go theatrical after that.
Then it goes into theatrical.
Yeah.
Any interest, or I'm just curious how this would work, just from an integrity point of view. But I mean, my brain always goes to documentary because I'm a documentary filmmaker. Have you ever considered that as a possibility? I mean, you have such amazing stories. Obviously, a lot of it is very private, but would that be a possibility to do that?
I think that would absolutely be a
We
possibility.
have a show on the Ambassador of Compassion TV show.
Yeah, we have a reality show that
I was going to say, like, is there a reality show that people can tune into and watch these stories?
Not yet, but
we have.
Okay.
but we have one. Yeah, we have one that's been written, and we're meeting. Taking. Well, I mean, we're at the very baby steps of walking that out. But I also think a documentary would be so powerful.
The stories are amazing.
Because the stories are amazing, and youth, hearing from youth, and like you're saying, how we're connected. When one person shares their story, it's transformative to other people. It's like that lifeline. Oh yeah, I can do that too. If one person can do it, I can do it too. And so we learn from each other. And I think hopefully as generations, we never stop learning from each other. But I think a documentary would be beautiful and powerful.
Yeah, because we used to, when I was younger, I thought just the movie alone would create all the change. Right. And for some people it does. Now we realize a great movie opens the heart. Yeah. Speaks to the heart. And when you tie it to Ambassador of Compassion, then you equip the heart. Yeah. And so now when you take the right movie and the program, the transformational power of storytelling tied to a proven transformational measured program of ambassadors, then it releases theatrically. So you make a movie, you've got this 3 or 4 month stop to do all this amazing heart change. And then it goes theatrically. So that's where we're going. But yes, I mean, a documentary, I think what we're moving back into that space. Mm-hmm. We were on what seemed like a detour, and now it's a blessing. Yeah. And it wasn't. I'll be very transparent. It was challenging. We said no to almost $27 million on to make great movies. And as a director, thinking that's all I would ever be. That's all I ever wanted to be. That's all I ever was when I was in 4th grade, bringing the neighborhood kids all together to make home films. It was hard to say.
Why did you guys say no?
Because there was this sense that we needed to stay on this path with Ambassadors of Compassion. And so it's hard to do that and also do a major feature film.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we were living in Beverly Hills and we got a multi-million-dollar deal, and our apartment looked at the building where we got the deal from, and we couldn't even pay our rent. Yeah. It was so low. This happened many times. And we were like, what are we going to do? And as this is happening, we hear a big crash and both of our cars got hit by one car and thrown up on the curb, totally destroyed. So we're able to pay our rent for months after that. And we had our cars during that season were hit 9 times. And instead of fixing them, we paid our rent. And it was hard because we wanted to be like, why are we doing this? Let's just say no and go say yes to making that movie we love. But there was just that sense, right? We all have that discernment we have to follow. So, there's no path to greatness without obstacles, detours, or failures. I'm not saying we're great. I'm just saying everyone like yourself, right? We love people who walk with a limp, right? Because you can trust them. People who walk with a limp, who've gone through adversity and have stuck the course. That's resiliency, right? And so that was our journey.
Wow. I would love to end this interview with just one question to each of you, which is, if you could kind of sum up in one sentence, be the elevator pitch for a moment, what would be one really important lesson you've learned in all these years of working with young people and just the travels and challenges and experiences that you've had? What would be one lesson that if you had to write it on if it was your epitaph, what would it be?
Hard to choose just one. You want to?
Yeah.
You want choose the best one. We'll write your book later, but choose.
This is where you send the questions ahead of time. Like, at least your audience knows that this is not pre-planned.
This is not pre-planned. I don't pre-plan anything. I like keeping everyone on their toes.
I thank you. I think. No, thank you. I would say for me, because I traveled all over the country last year, 5 times to the East Coast as well, to launch students in their Ambassador Passion program. And I think it's so easy to judge globally a generation. It just is. And you just say, oh, they're this or they're that. But when I'm with them intimately, right. And you hear about their hurt, their pain, their negative experiences, the challenges they're having to go through, their fears, their anxiety, you realize these are just like my own children, right? I'm with my own children, but it's so easy to be far away and judge them. And then when you're able to see that you're equipping youth with tools and you watch them begin to step out over a period of 2 or 3 months, and you're like, okay, I shouldn't judge, right? Because what do I know? Like, what do I know what they've been through? No matter how much I hear a story, they're always different, right? We never want to judge because we never know what another person's going through. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing, is just love and compassion with strength, right? Compassion is strong. And there's times where I want to be easy because I know they're going through so much and I want to be easy on them. But it's like, no, I can love, give them the tool, equip them and push them along with their teachers and volunteers, and know that's compassion and that's love. Not to let my sympathy cut off the bigger picture of having them be ready for life, for family, for marriage, for their children, for their career, their dreams.
Yeah.
Jodi, what about you?
I mean, to that point, I think there is something when you connect and you see the person that everybody wants, right? We have an innate need. It's just a primal need to be seen and heard. I think it's so easy to see the dirt sometimes, but can we be that generation? Can we be even, a mom and mama bear, papa bear that actually sees the gold in this generation, sees the gold, calls it out, and challenges them up?
Yeah. Beautiful.
What have you learned on your journey?
What's my lesson?
What have you? Yes. What can you share with us?
You're really turning it on its head, aren't you? I would say that my biggest lesson that I've learned, especially by doing this podcast, really comes down to really understanding that it's so human and normal to feel uncomfortable feelings.
So good.
And I've said this on this podcast a dozen times, and I will say it a dozen more, that one of my favorite interviews, besides this one, of course, was in my very first season, I interviewed Dr. Joan Rosenberg, who is a therapist and wrote the book 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. And it really changed my life. There's very few things that, I'm an avid reader. I probably read 3 books a week, but this book by far has been the greatest catalyst in changing everything in my life in terms of how I see my emotional system. And she breaks it down into 8 different uncomfortable feelings: sadness, anger, shame, embarrassment, helplessness, frustration, vulnerability, and disappointment. Okay. And she says that every person has these 8, and it's all about being able to say that you have one of those 8, to be able to say it to yourself. And then if you're in a relationship, to be able to say it to the person that you love.
So
that vulnerability.
Good.
So good. I mean, it literally
builds up and then you get angry.
Because like, how many times do you get into a fight with your wife or your husband, and you'll just be like, you did. It's like the first thing you say is you did, or you should have, or why didn't you? But really the words, if you turn them upside down, and the words started with, I feel angry. I'm so disappointed. I'm frustrated. Well, that's a different conversation. Like you hear it totally differently.
Good.
So for me, that has
on the person who's willing to be vulnerable like that versus anger and feel defensive. Sorry, I stepped your line, please.
Yes, no, that's exactly what it is. It just changes everything about the way that you can communicate, because one of the hardest things for me growing up was I was very good at not knowing how I felt. Like I could go on autopilot. I could be anything for anyone else. I was very good at that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, honestly, I really honestly didn't know what I was feeling. I just knew I was feeling all of it. And it felt like heat and anxiety and a host of other things, but I couldn't pinpoint what am I feeling. I remember like as a kid running to my bedroom and locking the door and going in my closet and just sitting there to try to like calm my nervous system down. I didn't know at the time that's what I was doing, but I was trying to calm down because I didn't know how to put words to my emotions. And it was so stressful. And then I became an adult and I kind of continued to do that in my own way. I mean, I didn't run to my bedroom and lock myself in my closet all the time.
all the time. Not every time.
But I was doing it in different ways. You know, I was doing the avoidant dance and I was really good at, you know, being angry at one thing when it was really something else, or lashing out. You know, I was trained by Al-Qaeda warriors in speech, so I could cut down my enemy in seconds, really. Actually, with just a stare. I was that good.
Wow.
So yeah, I think for me, it's been, you know, how to be, the lesson has been how to use my voice, which by the way, I don't think I've 100% mastered. Maybe I'm like 85%. I'll give myself that. But there are times that I revert, you know, we all do because we have habits, you know.
Yep.
That's funny you say cut down because I was bullied a lot as a kid. I was 4'11" and 95 pounds as a freshman in high school at 15 and a half. And then I grew a foot basically in the next year and a half. But I still felt small. Mm-hmm. And in my brain, I'd always being picked on, always think about what I wish I could have said, wish I, you know. And then you get older and you get bigger, and then you're starting to say those things. And I've had to undo that very thing. Right now I have the perfect words because I spent years thinking about should have, would have, could have, which was totally wrong. Right. Instead of forgiving and letting it go. And I've had to really undo that look or the laugh or the, you know, the laugh that everybody loves.
I know. The kids are like, laugh.
When I was a kid, my dad, who was like, hated conflict and like refused to be, you know, at all, you know, he just never got into the arena. He was just like, nope, not doing it. And he would just let people walk all over him. He was really kind and really sweet. He was a big teddy bear. And so he would have this like dialogue that if he would come home and he'd be like pissed at this or that or something, he'd be like, and then I said, and he'd give like a whole diatribe of what he said. And it would always end the same way. Did you really say that? And he'd be like, I said to myself. Always, every single time. I knew as soon as he started going down that road of like what I said to that guy, it'd be like, at the end, he'd always be like, I said to myself.
So funny.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then to your point, knowing those feelings and then also having the bravery and the boldness to then say those feelings.
Yes.
And no, that's not weakness, it's strength.
That's right.
Because, if I share how I feel, it's weak. No, it's actually strength. Those are really powerful things what you shared.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm like you. I'm learning to use my voice. It's amazing to be at this age and learning to use my voice. And I think in our
your feeling voice.
My feeling
definitely her
voice.
Producer voice. Like
yeah.
Producer voice is very strong.
Very strong. But my my emotional voice, right? My feelings, that vulnerability.
About yesterday.
But using language that's more of an invitation, right? Where especially, in safe relationships, you're staying on the same team. You're not becoming enemies, but you're staying allies, even in the face of disappointment and negative emotions and, things that can be hurtful, right? I mean, that's the ultimate goal.
Yes. If we go any further, we'll be into a whole another podcast of everything we're learning personally, but that's
I want to do that one next.
I know that.
We'll have to bring you guys back and then get into it. Get into it for sure.
You've been a great interviewer.
I know.
Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate you guys being here. If there's any, if people want to just see what you guys are about or donate to the cause or volunteer, I have personally signed my name in the hat and I'm volunteering to be a coach. I'm still waiting for you guys to reach out. I don't know what that requires or entails, but I'm all in.
Whole city strategy now in LA since SoFi. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so down. I'm just waiting for you guys to tell me what to do, where to be, what to do. I'm ready.
You'll be followed up. You'll be followed up with.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And then you can go to ambassadorsofcompassion.com. ambassadorsofcompassion.com if anybody's interested to learn more about the program or donate.
And we're newly launching a whole new social media. So, we've kind of changed our direction. And so that's being launched on all the channels as well. We have Ambassadors of Compassion on Insta, we're on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook.
I'm very excited. And guys, all of this information will be in the show notes so you can check it out. And Eric and Jodi, you guys are the best. I'm so excited that you guys came.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. You were awesome.
Really appreciate it.